there's two different ways to look at this. And I think the way that the Patriots fans would prefer to look at it is this. It's just further confirmation of something we already know. We already know. We already know they had an affair. We don't need to have further proof of it. But I think the more practical reality is that in a story where we have had no way of expecting whatever is coming next, who would have had on the bingo card? What sort of Mad Libs puzzle would you have to figure out to have photos of the two of them at a marina at some lake in Tennessee from June of 2021, and then the next day a video of an extremely pregnant Dianna Russini walking down the dock with Mike Vrabel in his, that kind of strut that he's got. Who would have expected that? And that just proves the point. Expect the unexpected. When you least expect it, expect it.
Right.
Because people are out there digging through anything they can find. People are looking through their phones. There's a financial incentive for TMZ and the New York Post to get anything they can. And the point is, we never know what is going to be that one thing that just makes this untenable. Not from the perspective of the Patriots fans who would say, it's just further confirmation of an affair. Think about this. Put yourself in this situation. If this happens to you, and I'm not wishing it on anyone, and I'm sure it's happened to some people out there, but I would suspect that at some point the other party to the Vrabel marriage has handed her spouse a pad of paper and a pen and said, write down every time that you have been with this person since March of 2020. And leave none of them out. I want the whole story of what happened. That's a reasonable. Now, look, part of me is like, oh, you know what? We really shouldn't talk about that. And part of me is like, that's exactly what a normal person would be dealing with. Okay, let's assume this is normal. A normal reaction to this would be, faced with all this evidence, I want to know every time you were with her. I want to know where. I want to know when. I want to know it all. Or pack your shit and go. I think that's a normal reaction to the situation. And so, who knows what comes out that may contradict the story that was told when the opportunity was given to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth once and for all. That's one side of it, Michael. And the other side of it is what we talked about last Friday and continues to loom over all of this. When's she going to tell her story? Where is she going to tell her story? And what is she going to say? And as you said last week, she holds all the cards in that regard, and one sentence is enough to make it impossible for him to continue as the head coach of the Patriots. That and the whole, as I said earlier, if the personal situation becomes so demanding of his time and his effort to fix it, you can't. We're talking about officials. Full-time officials, 2 different jobs. Devin and I were talking about that the other day. There's no way a coach can be distracted from that job that requires his full focus for 7 months out of the year, and most of his focus for most of the rest of the year. That's the thing. This reaches a point where it just cannot keep going.
Well, you mentioned the reaction of a normal person going through this at home. That's the personal side of it. How about the professional side? How about the reaction of your boss? And Robert Kraft and Jonathan Kraft, they are Mike Vrabel's bosses. So what has he said to his bosses? And what do they want to know? Are they putting their heads in the sand? I don't think so. So did he tell them there's nothing else? They tell them there's nothing else after the Tribeca photos. Anything else? Mike, anything else? Anything else? Nope. It's over now. That's it. Okay, I'm going to tell you, Tribeca. And then there's something else that comes out. Every time something comes out, did they have this on their tablet, on their legal notepad, that Robert Kraft go look down and say, oh, yeah, he told me about this. Yeah. I already knew that he was out in Tennessee in 2021 on a boat with a very pregnant Dianna Russini. Now, that doesn't surprise me. And I think that's the other thing, too, where you get to the point, will the Crafts get to the point and say, well, wait a minute. You didn't necessarily tell me this. Or you told me part of the story. You didn't tell me the whole story. And even if he did tell them everything, they know that, but they can't control how once you have the information, but then, okay, release it to the public. Now it's out of your control again. Maybe you know the information, but you don't know how the public is going to respond to it. You don't know how your team is going to respond to it, how these things are just going to keep coming back. You're going to keep coming back and hovering. It hovers over the franchise. How long do they want to deal with it? Because it's not just Mike Vrabel. Every time Mike Vrabel comes up for the Patriots, and Robert Kraft can't love this, every time something comes up with Vrabel, there are some writers, and Nancy Armour is the latest in USA Today. Hey, well, of course this would happen with the Patriots. Of course the Patriots are okay with this because there's Spygate and Deflategate, and the owner had his situation in Florida. It unleashes all the other sins of the Patriots' past. And how is that good for business? I mean, I guess it could be. You can interpret it that way and say, at least they're talking about us. But I don't think this is the kind of PR that the Patriots are looking for.
Well, it sets up an us against the world mentality to the extent that Patriots fans have morphed into the posture of, it was just an affair. We know it was an affair. Everything else is noise. And that's a reasonable reaction. I'm not saying it's unreasonable. But I think the more pragmatic view is this personal issue has become a football issue by virtue of Mike Vrabel issuing 2 statements draft week and missing the 3rd day of the draft to go to counseling in Salt Lake City after he stopped at the airport to buy a sweatsuit. I don't know. There are so many weird things about this. And that underscores the reality, too, that it crossed over into the Tanya Harding, Nancy Kerrigan territory. Not that it's ever going to be as big as that story was, but once it becomes fodder for the paparazzi, that's another complicating factor. Everywhere he goes, it's going to be somebody taking his picture. It's going to be somebody asking the hostile questions. That guy a couple weeks ago, I mean, I'm surprised Vrabel didn't just turn with the forearm shiver. Of course, that's what the guy for both business reasons and legal reasons, although no lawsuit is better than your health. Don't invite getting beat up by some guy who's really big and really strong just so you could sue him. It's far better to have all your teeth. Yeah. But that is now part of his narrative.
Bigger than you think. Even though he's, yes. You know this, Mike, because you've talked with him many times. Yeah, he's bigger than you think, and you think he's big on TV. No, in person, when we're talking every bit of 6'5", at this point, and he played around 250, 260. At this point, 265, 270. I don't think you want it. You don't want it because he knows it's not just the size. He knows how to use his size. So yeah, I wouldn't want to get into a rumble with him.
This has all become fodder for the tabloids, fodder for the gossip shows, fodder for mainstream conversation. Hell, where was it? I think on Bill Maher's show, there was a reference to Vrabel a couple of weeks ago in the monologue. There was a bit on The Daily Show the other night before the 2If by Sea photos came out.
Right.
Before that, they had a whole bit on The Daily Show about it. So it's crossed over. And that's not good for anybody, and that's not good for business. And these are all the things that the people involved need to take into consideration. And ultimately, the question is this before we break, because we must. Will this affect the ability of Mike Vrabel to be the absolute best coach he can be? There's going to be no way of knowing for sure, but I'll tell you what's going to happen. If they start losing games this year, and that schedule's a lot tougher this year, do you think that the talk is going to get louder, or do you think it's going to get quieter? So All to be determined, all to be seen, and through it all, we never know what the next development is going to be. We have no idea where it's going to come from, although we can narrow it down to TMZ and the New York Post. We have no idea what the context will be, but there's going to be something, and at some point, she's going to tell her story. At some point between now and the end of this decade, she's going to tell her story. And what it is going to be a factor in whether or not Mike Vrabel can continue, not because he gets fired, but because he looks at the situation and says, at a minimum, I need to take a year off. That's the one thing that I'm watching for, not a permanent resignation. Step down for a year, Josh McDaniels takes over as interim coach for a year, and then they see if this all dies down in a year and Vrabel can come back. Because they don't want to lose the guy. The guy's a great coach. That's what's so weird about this. He's such a great coach. And to be involved in something that, and I posed this question to you last night, like I've said this before, how can a guy that smart do something this stupid? And by stupid, I mean just completely indiscreet, walking around out in the open, at the bar in New York, signing their names on the sheet, and just come up with a different name. Have her come up with a different name. Let her be Mrs. Vrabel. I mean, there's no effort to conceal it. That's what makes it all so weird. How did they not think that at some point, Michael, and I know we have to break, but how could you not think at some point someone's going to find out about this?
Well, but see, that's one of the strengths. I mean, the cliche is gift and a curse, but it really is. You know, cliches exist for a reason because they're true. So the gift of Mike Vrabel is that he's got 0 F's to give in general. As a player, he was like that. Playing for Bill Belichick, he was the one guy who could go back and forth with Belichick in a team meeting and didn't believe in the, hey, do your job all the time and keep your mouth shut. He didn't. He'd give it back to the coaches. He'd give it to Tom Brady. He would just, that's Mike Vrabel. He's unfiltered. He's unpredictable. It's just who he is. But that's the weakness, too. The weakness was that, hey, whatever. I'll just, I am who I am. And so he's out there. He probably should be a little bit more discreet, but that's not who he is. That's not who he is. And I'll say quickly, the other thing is, and I found this out during the season. Now, this is a different context. And I said to somebody here in Boston, I said, look, Vrabel's going to get in trouble. He thinks he knows more than the media. He thinks he knows the media better than the media. He's almost like an ombudsman, at times when he's giving his press conferences. I'm like, well, you're good, but you don't know more than the media. And so came back to bite him. He thought he could kind of talk down the media when this first came out with the New York Post, and that came back to bite him in a big way. That was a huge mistake. He thought he could just say, this is laughable and I'm not going to talk about it anymore. Well, you're still going to talk about it, and you're going to talk about it for a while. It's not, they know more than you do. It's their full-time job. Your full-time job should be coaching. And there is a big difference between those two worlds.
I'm not sure of many things, but I am sure of this. No competent PR professional is ever going to recommend using the term laughable in connection with an effort to take the steam out of any story from this point until the end of time, however far or short from now that may be. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.